gentlemen, for participating in this webinar. We have organized this seminar uh, uh, just to kind of have a discussion on the recently presented budget of the Pakistan. And we have requested Dr. Sajid Amin as a guest speaker to talk about the salient feature of this budget and kind of eliminate our participants as to the nitty-gritty and what is really expected of the economy, particularly in this budget for the people of Pakistan. I think without delaying any further, I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Sajid Amin. He has the policy solution at Sustainable Development Institute. And prior to joining this organization, he served with the PIDE, one of the premier research institution in Pakistan. And I think he's been involved with a lot of national and international organizations. And most importantly, he has been engaged in developing a localized framework of the SDGs for Punjab and Balochistan. He is a member of visiting faculty at National Institute of Management, Islamabad, as well as National School of Public Policy, Foreign Services Academy, Pakistan Institute of Development Economics, and NDU. He also regularly contributes to print and electronic media on issues related to the macroeconomy. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a really important presentation, and I think we need to learn from our eminent speaker today as to what are the salient or what are the main features of this budget 2021. And I think there's few things that I would like to touch upon is that, this over the last 2 years since the PTI government has taken over, I think they were handed over an economy that was suffering from twin deficit. When I say twin deficit, I mean external current account deficit as well as fiscal deficit. And I think we were at the verge of default, if I'm not wrong, at that time. I mean, I'm talking about 2018 and 19. And this government has really made a lot of efforts to kind of, take care of the current account problem and to pay the debt that was required to be paid in that during that time. And I think right now things are looking pretty good as far as the balance of payment is concerned, primarily due to the decrease in imports. And among these imports, the most important is oil. And we are very lucky that due to this pandemic, unfortunately, I mean, this is the fortunate aspect of this unfortunate pandemic that the whole world is confronting, and the world economy is expected to shrink by around 6% in the next year. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are really in a very difficult environment. Pakistan's economy is faced with a lot of challenges, and like many other countries, international trade and a lot of international economic relationship, they are not at that level as they were before the pandemic, because everyone is looking inward since the pandemic. And again, just one thing I like to say, that Pakistan is in some regards very, it's a blessing in disguise that we are an agrarian economy, and I think this year is going to be very difficult. But if we focus on agriculture, although I think the overall growth is expected to go down, but we can really exploit our and harness our agriculture resources to cover and to kind of improve our situation, or at least take care of our food security. Uh, and that if we can do that, because this year is just about survive. If we can survive and deal with this and come out of this without really hurting our economy and our society, I think that would be a great achievement. So, ladies and gentlemen, without wasting any more time or without taking more of your time, I would request our eminent scholar and economist, Dr. Sajid Amin, to present and discuss his views on the current budget, the budget of 2020-21. Thank you very much. Over to you, Dr. Saab.
Sir, thank you so much for a very generous introduction. To me, it's really a great pleasure to be part of such learned people sitting on the cameras, behind the cameras, on the microphones. And genuinely, I'm here to, I don't find myself in a capacity to sort of कि आप लोगों को मैं कोई उसमें knowledge में इजाफा कर सकूं. Generally, I'm here particularly to share my thoughts on how do I see this budget.
Thank you.
Some very learned people on the
nice
mic sitting. I can see Dr. Jabbar Saab's name as well. One of the finest teacher जिसका मुझे student होने का इजाज़ रहा है. So I'm mainly also to share my thoughts and learn from your thoughts as well, particularly. If you just allow me, I'll put my cam on, cam off to maintain
Please.
voice quality और उन सारी चीजों को जरा उसमें बेहतर रखा जा सके. You know,
one thing I would request, sorry sir, try to make your presentation in English, because I think there are some international participants.
Definitely.
So I mean, we should try to make as much as possible. I mean, it's not. I mean, I'm not limiting you, but generally speaking, I think it would be a good idea, because this is going to be made available.
That's fine. That's totally understood.
And various, social media and all that later on.
Sure.
So thank you very much if you can.
Yeah, please, definitely. Thank you so much for this clarity.
Go ahead, sir.
You know, whenever budget, somebody was asking me a couple of days back on the budget, so I said the month of June in Pakistan is known for hot summers and budgets. So I'll just any budget or any policy making has a particular context in which this is made actually. So before I sort of delve on the budget, or I share my thoughts on the budget, let me just put briefly what is the context in which that budget was prepared and presented. So I'll take two to three points that I'll be sharing. For the world, the biggest context for these budgets, that is the COVID pandemic. It has really disrupted the economies across the world. All the demand supply mechanisms, channels has been totally disrupted. Starting from a health pandemic, it has now translated into economic and financial pandemic. So that was the one context that Pakistan was facing, like the world was having. But there is a unique challenge that Pakistan was facing while preparing and presenting this budget, which many other countries, for example, our peer countries in Bangladesh and India, they were not facing. That is that we were under extended fund facility program of IMF. Our peer countries, Bangladesh, India, and many other developing countries, they do not have they are not under stabilization regime. So if I put it another way, before the pandemic, we were in a stabilization regime. we were practicing contractionary policies. It's contractionary monetary policy, the interest rate going in 1.5 years from 6% to 13.25%, austerity, cut in government expenditures, meeting the deficits, bringing them the low. So that was Pakistan's policy before the pandemic actually, and we were in the under stabilization regime. So when the pandemic hit us, we had to take a 180-degree turn from absolutely contractionary monetary policy to expansionary monetary and expansionary fiscal policies. But at the same time, we have some commitments, some conditionalities imposed by the EFF that we have to meet. And also, the second review of the program is yet to come. It hasn't given a green signal. So this was another context under which this present budget was prepared and presented. And this was unique to Pakistan, particularly in our, if you see, in the South Asia. The third point that I would like to highlight that affects your budget preparations, setting the targets, that is how you see last year's performance. You may call it an adaptive policy making. Much of the budget preparation in 2021 will depend on how do you see, how did you perform in 1920? And there comes another feature, that is how you interpret your economic performance in the last year that has gone, if you can call it T minus 1 year. If current year is the T year, the past year is the T minus 1 year. If you see in the past years, like Makbul Sahab also highlighted, and if you see Pakistan Economic Survey as well, when the government is claiming some of the achievements, the one is the trade deficit, I mean the current account deficit, that is reduced by roughly more than 70%. That is again a roughly 15 to 16, 17% growth rate in the non-tax revenues. I mean, it's a huge growth overall in the non-tax revenues as well. 134% in non-tax revenues. Now, this has implication that's why I'm putting it. How do you interpret it? That defines your target setting and the policy mode in the next year to come, in 2021. Now, when government says that 1920 was a very good year, that we controlled the deficit by 30%. But let's see, where is that deficit coming from? The control of deficit coming from? It's coming from a slowing down economy, moving from a growth rate of 5.48% to 1.9%, and now, of course, minus 0.4%. Another example that I think affected government setting the targets, that was exactly, for example, the growth in non-tax revenues. Now, there was roughly 1.6 trillion rupees collected through non-tax revenue in the last year. And this year's target, I think, is 1.19 trillion. That sounds good that it has been adjusted. But all of you know better than me, actually, that where was that non-tax revenue coming from? The nominal growth in the tax revenues last year was from inflation, which we call inflation tax. The non-tax revenue were mainly coming from State Bank of Pakistan, and that was mainly sponsored by high interest rate, 13.25%. Now, it is back to half roughly in terms of inflation. We moved from 14.25% inflation at time now to 8 to 9%. Similarly, on the policy rate. So the third moment in the context which I'm putting is that how does government see the last year's performance? And that is reflected in the budget actually. My last point on the context is political economy of budget. You know, there is always sort of a trade-off between politics and economics whenever you are presenting a budget. The party manifestos, the government's commitments, the promises that it has made, the recent claims that it has been celebrating as a success, that drive you to set the targets, to maintain the policies, and to take the policy routes that you have to take. In my understanding, the one most important element of in this context of politics versus economics that is reflected in budget as well is somewhere there is a thought going on that the opposition parties, they wanted to see the government failing on the economy actually. So government is trying to not fail on the economy. And this is again reflected in budget we will share. I mean, I'll discuss it. This has compromised most probably our budget for the economy or the economics with the key focus on the pandemic actually. So this is the final fact that I am trying to make in the context. The government in general, in particular, and our experts and many other in general, they seem making a systematic error. They seem assuming that out of the shutdown, out of the lockdown, businesses and economy will directly move to recovery. They are forgetting the consolidating phases. If you see the evidence which is coming, that is the supply chains are disrupted domestically, internationally, global slowdown. But if you see the targets that we are setting in this budget, they seem assuming that once we are able to flatten the curve in terms of infection rate or in terms of unfortunate deaths that we are having, the next day is the recovery day. And we will start collecting the revenues at the pace at which we have been in the last year. That seems sort of a major error. I mean, there is a consolidating phase. There is a you have to integrate that businesses back into supply chain. Roughly 19% of SMEs, 90% of SMEs in Pakistan are reporting that their supply chain is disrupted, and they are not financially included. The total credit to private sector in Pakistan, which is going from State Bank of Pakistan, only 7% of it goes to SMEs. So this may prolong the revival period of the SMEs, of the businesses, which counter for roughly 80% of the economic activity and job, 86% of the jobs. They have roughly 40% contribution to GDP. So this is the major context in which I think this budget was set in. In my thoughts, I'll just focus on two key questions and then see how does budget happen to be on those two questions. My first question, or the premises of analysis that I am putting is how supporting this budget is for an economic recovery. To me, the time on what is the revenue target or what is the expenditure targets, that becomes secondary, at least in this budget. Though I think it has always been secondary. But if you have to assess a budget, to me in 1921, the fundamental question is how well it supports or facilitates your economic recovery. The second question is again, how well it protects people from the social and economic fallout of the pandemic, what it has for the people on this front actually. So these are the two broader themes in which I'll be just framing my discussion. But of course, I'll just keep moving somewhere there. But these are the broader context in this one. If you see in this context, particularly in this context of the questions, that's on the economic recovery, if I take it as a major, the budget 2021 seems not very promising. But let me just add one point here, as I put the context, and government, of course, has a genuine explanation here, that there is a resource constraint, there is a limited fiscal space under which we have to operate, and we have to prepare the budgets. But if you see the global advice that is coming, it's three key themes. That is the global advice coming on the budgets or any economic policy or in terms of responses to pandemic. The number one is don't fear the deficits and prioritize people over economy. We have been consulting with government of Pakistan. We have been continuously conveying this message as well, that if there is a need to run the deficit, this is this year now. It cannot be emphasized more. I'll come on this one later, that how our deficit target will be sort of not be achieved. It has to be revised. But what implication does it have on the policy over the year? The second advice that is coming across the world, that is aim for social spending to protect people now.
Dr. Sir, can you share your screen with the participants?
I really don't have any PowerPoint, to be very honest.
Oh, okay.
Just some minor points and just going.
No, because one of the participant was asking. I thought, no, I'm fine. I'm really fine. Your presentation is excellent, sir. I'm fine.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
But I'm just going my random thoughts, not very in terms.
No. Great, sir. Continue.
The third advice that the people would like to see this year, any expert who is assessing the budget, who he knows or she knows that get ready to run the deficit. When you are in the lockdown, when you are in the 3 months or the 4 months of the pandemic, and you are totally, your economic activity has been closed, though your revenue was dipping. I mean, if you see the data latest coming from Pakistan, there was roughly 6 to 7% decline in manufacturing production in Pakistan over the last 9 months before March. But in the March to June, it is more than 30% shrinking in the manufacturing sector. So in these times, of course, borrowing and deficit financing is emerging as a main tool across the world. If you see the Indian response or the package to pandemic, a major bulk of it is being financed by the Reserve Bank of India, RBI, by understanding it's between the government of India. So this was the time, to me, of course, our participants can disagree. I mean, not necessarily to agree, it's just my reflection. This was the time to run the deficit. So I'll just take 4 key indicators and then I'll just open for discussion. Number one, let's see the biggest claim on this tax, that we do not impose any new taxes. And that is a fantastic news. I mean, it's very good news. If at least the speech of the Honorable Minister and many documents speak that there is definitely no new taxes, though there are some news coming that there can be roughly around 200 billion taxes on sort of in Islamabad, in housing and something like that. But broadly, there is no new taxes in this government, in this budget. And that's a good news, actually. But how many of you think that it is a good news if you put it in a context? Let me put it in context. These taxes, when there is no change, are basically from the taxes which were imposed in 19 and 20 budget. And we know, all of us, those who are around us, they know it, that budget and that tax lines and that tax levels were designed to make the economy control the deficit. Under the IMF, under the Extended Fund Facility Program, those tax levels were designed to control the deficits. It was under contractionary fiscal policy. Those taxes reflect a contractionary fiscal policy, because government has already claiming it that the last year it was to control the deficit. And all of you know, under Extended Fund Facility, that you have to meet the deficit targets. The revenue target set was 50 billion for FBR, 5.5 trillion target. So those taxes, slabs, those tax levels, who are designed to stabilize the economy under a regime of contractionary fiscal policy, by definition do not suit for an expansionary monetary policy, expansionary fiscal policy. So the claim that this is a expansionary fiscal policy budget is not validated actually. If you see the budget, the tax lines that I am keeping are designed for the contractionary fiscal policy. So that is the number one serious challenge here. If we go with this budget, and experts believe that this will be changed maybe in next 2 months, 3 months, and it has to be changed. Because if you go whole year with this budget, you are actually putting in place policy measures which are to maintain the economy under control and not to expand the economy. So that is number one issue with this one. So if you have to expand, if you have to be really expansionary fiscal policy, you have to cut these taxes down. You have to adjust these taxes towards the expansionary monetary policy, fiscal policy. And like an example, if any of you wanted to go through an example, see the budget of Bangladesh. But again, I'll just highlight that this is not under the IMF budget in the Bangladesh, and that's why I put a context. And this is what the explanation comes from the government and from the many of the experts. But there is another side of this claim. The IMF and the world, the multilateral financial institutional across the world, they are allowing you to run the deficits in the social spending. The fund and all other MFIs, international financial institutions, IFIs, they're very clear that we are okay, we are ready to talk on the deficits which are actually meant to sponsor the social investment or the social spending, the productive spending. Of course, if you go for some spendings which are unproductive and they create deficit, they will of course hurt. So the government should have taken this liberty, should have taken this opportunity to showcase to the fund that this is the amount that we are allocating, and this will be the size of deficit that will inflate because of these extra spendings. But these spendings are for COVID. So I hope it would have been much better. The second argument that comes from the government here and many of the experts, and of course we understand it as well, that much of the social spending is to the provinces now. It's provincial subject, health, education, social safety nets, they are much to the provinces, so they can manage it. To some extent, it sounds justifiable because of course under the NFC, provinces take a larger chunk of the revenues, and they have. But the capacity of provinces is also disturbed under this pandemic. Their capacity to resource generation is limited. And when we think that the major source, and the government does know it, and the budget documents speak it as well, that it will be the borrowing, which will be mainly financing your expenditure, be it current expenditure or be it development. If you just once pay the debt servicing, the government, federal government is almost left with the nothing. It has to go for the borrowing. The provinces cannot borrow from central bank or from the external borrowing. So they cannot run the deficits mainly, which can be financed by the external accounts, external sources. But the government does have, the federal government does have. And this is where we come with the interesting part, that when we are claiming that we are having an expansionary fiscal policy, and we know factually that revenue will slow down in this year and expenditure will increase, but still we are eyeing a deficit target of 7% compared to the 9.1% in the last year, in which 9 months were normal years. And they were designed for a contractionary fiscal policy. To me, at this point of time, by the end of 2021, June 21, all of you will see, we will not be able to maintain that deficit target of 7%. We will go beyond it. But putting at this point of time, if let's not go beyond, just agree on the 9%. If the government was able to put 9% deficit target here, with the extra 2% resources which are creating that deficit, only going to the pandemic related activities, creating social safety nets, strengthening social protection, and supporting SMEs. So this would have been created two impacts. It would have created a fiscal space with the government, and it would have killed the uncertainty that it has been created in the market. Because budget in the Pakistan and in many developing countries, fiscal policy is actually the leading policy. It's the main policy. Any uncertainty that's created in the fiscal policy, that actually goes through across the years. So the budget at this point also, it has increased the uncertainty when the market knows that the every target that is put there is almost unachievable. So it creates an uncertainty that when are we having a new budget. And many of you who are following the rupee value, exchange rate value, you would see some sort of reflection it in last 4 or 5 days. The rupee is losing again. It is trading at 166 point something per dollar. And this is the one main reason that is coming is the economic uncertainty that this budget has created, because you ask every second expert and they will say that this will be revised in within 2 to 3 months. And this is where the budget loses its value, because budget mean giving a policy direction to your businesses, to your investors. They know that these tax rates, these subsidy rates, they will carry on, these tariff rates will carry on. And they plan in a 1 year horizon. And if it's certain that in 2 months you will be getting a new budget, so that's create problems. Coming to some traditional sources of assessment of the budget, these targets are not sponsored basically by the landscape of economy. If you see the future and if you take guidance from the past, let's see government's own number and how it seems that they were not able to consider those numbers when they were putting the target. And one of our very senior colleague, Dr. Ashfaq Hassan Saab, has written a very excellent article on it. I mean, let's see on the revenue target. The government itself is aiming that the target of growth rate is 2.1%. And the inflation target that is aimed is 6.5%. So let's add up them both to get a nominal growth rate. And that roughly in the revenues, it will be, or in the economy, it's roughly 9% if you take a factor cost as well. I mean, if you take a growth of 1% or 0.5% in factor costs over this year, the calculation that is coming from the experts is 9%. That our economy is expected to grow 9% nominally in the coming year. And that is coming from the government's own target setting, 2.1% growth rate. That actually is very hard to meet, but let's assume that it is met. Inflation again, 6.5% or 7%, let's see. On average, by maximum, the nominal growth in the economy that government's numbers speak is 9.5%. So an economy which government itself believes that nominally will be growing at a 9.5%, how can give it a revenue growth of more than 17%? And still it remains an expansionary fiscal policy. So the idea that is coming from that the highest target roughly should have been 4,000 billion rupees for the federal FBR and the tax revenues overall. And this is again another point. This is budget seems unrealistic in terms of even the own numbers that government is presenting. In the context, I said that how you interpret last year that define your next year's expectation are the projections in the budget making actually. In the non-tax in the tax revenues, the government is targeting to collect 2.9 trillion out of 4.9 trillion from the indirect taxes. and in which I think the assumption that government seems to taking is sort of unprecedented growth in the sales tax last year. It grew more than 20% around about, more than 20. I mean, the exact number I don't exactly remember, but most probably it is 27% के करीब, the growth in sales tax. But the government needs to understand where was that sales tax growth coming from. The contribution of sales tax in the total revenue was 38.1%, which is 3 percentage, 0.3 percentage point higher even than the total direct taxes. But that sales tax growth was coming from the inflation. Now, when the inflation is slowing down from 14 point, if you see government's own number at 6.5%, so let's say assume 8%, 9%. So it is 5 percentage point less than there. Again, the demand side is contracting. The pandemic has also squeezed your demand side as well. So if your number of transactions, let's assume that government goes under the lockdown that as WHO is pushing us. So the number of transaction or the total aggregate demand goes down, inflation rate goes down. How can you meet a target of indirect taxes of the 2.9 trillion? So this is again where the government does not seem to even oblige to its own numbers, which it is putting on the budget. So this was one my point on example. If we go on this, I'll just be concluding in the final point on this one, and then I'll be hearing more on from their side. You see the social spending, the world is asking to go for the social spending. The total social spending, for example, if you see from the SHAS, if we take as a flagship program of the social spending of the federal government, the increase is very negligible. It's just from 187 billion rupees to 208 billion. Only 21 billion extra added. And this is when the world, IFIs and many other institutes are allowing you to finance the budget through deficit, through borrowing, create deficits, run deficits to finance your pandemic related. Similar are the numbers from the health sector. It's just roughly 20 billion rupees, to the health sector exactly. So in overall, the government does not seem to focus as much as it should have been on the social spending. And this is where the government was able, if it wanted to create a deficit, and that deficit should have been there. I'm sure all of you know PSDP numbers. I'll just not repeat के बहुत ज़्यादा वो repetitives ना हो जाएं. So finally, just to conclude, to me, I'll just 4 points. Number one, it's not expansionary fiscal policy if the numbers speak. The taxes of the last year do not justify to call it an expansionary fiscal policy. The amount of stimulus that was required, that is not there. That seems missing there. And I call it, this is not a pandemic budget, if you can broadly call it. This is not a pandemic budget. At the same time, if you, the way I started, the point that I mentioned already, the taxes meant for economic contraction cannot be economic growth friendly. So to me, the government seems controlling the deficit here again, the surplus and the IMF targets. You can call another component of that budget as a signaling budget, and this is what experts believe, that at this point of time, this may serve a better signal to the fund for the second review, but it has to be changed in next 2 to 3 months. So this you can, but I am calling it is not a pandemic or the growth budget, particularly despite all the constraints, there was a room. Many other countries in the world are doing those who have the constraints. Thank you so much. My apologies if I've taken too much time, and I remain available to discuss all these points.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. This was a really great presentation, and you covered almost all the base, what you call mini budgets, in a couple of months. And so now I think, first of all, again, I thank you on behalf of the Department of Quantitative Methods, School of Business and Economics. And now I ask the moderator, Moin Azad Saab and Muslim Raza, to kind of moderate the question answer session so that our participants can interact and ask question from our honorable guest speaker. Please go ahead. One of the question I see here from one of the participants is that, sir, if there is no taxes, then how the government is going to be able to run their day-to-day business? So I think the answer to that would be very simple. It is about no new taxes. It is not that they are getting, I mean, making it a zero taxation regime. You know, there will be no new taxes in the fiscal year 2020 to 2021. So that answer, I think that question has been answered. Is there any other question? Anyway, if there is no question, I would again thank all the participants for taking the time and participating and coming to this webinar. And most importantly, especially on behalf of the University of Management and Technology, School of Business and Economics, Department of Quantitative Method, and my team, particularly Rumela Kamar, Muslim Raza, Moin Azad, and Naima Shahzadi. I really thank you, sir, very much for taking time to talk to us, talk to our students and faculty. This was a great presentation, and we look forward to having you again. Thank you very much, all of you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Welcome, sir.